In this episode, we reviewed High and Low, which was released in 1963 and was directed by Akira Kurosawa. Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a YouTube video podcast exploring storytelling on film, as well as interviews with industry professionals who work in film, television, theater, among other areas of the arts. I want to welcome to the show Tom Lorenzo, who is the co-host of the podcast You're Missing Out, which is a fantastic show. Tom, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, man. It's my pleasure. Always down to talk about cinema. If you don't see the massive collection behind me, this is not like a screen that I put up. This is
That's a green screen.
This is my room. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, and always glad to talk about the man we'll be talking about today, Akira Kurosawa. Love that man.
Oh, me too. I haven't done enough Kurosawa on my show, so this is a great opportunity. But out of curiosity, have you ever counted how many physical media, Blu-ray, DVDs you have behind you there?
I have an app because I used to do it in a Word doc, like cataloging them, and then it just got to be too much. And I would I felt like at a certain point I messed up the count. So I was like, all right, fuck, I need to kind of just find an app. And I found an app, and it's definitely close to 5,000 movies.
Whew, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so there's because there's box sets and double feature discs and everything like that, and yeah, it is a lot. It's definitely a lot to deal with, especially now that I'm pretty much running out of wall space at this point. I'm maybe a year away from running out of wall space and having to reconsider my living space and how everything is put together. It is nuts. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's impressive though. It puts mine to shame, my little one that I'm looking at over here.
So I've been doing it since I got my first job when I was 17 working at Target, and that was when Blu-rays kind of really started. And each job I got paid better, so my purchasing got a little more out of control. And in a month, Criterion at Barnes & Noble is going to do their 50% off sale, and that's going to be bad news for my bank account. I always go a little too ham, especially since it's been 9-10 months since the last Barnes & Noble sale. It's always July and November, so it's been a while. So whatever has been released since November, it's oh god damn it, I gotta get these now. I know After Hours on 4K. Finally, After Hours is getting a home video release. Very happy about that.
Yes, me too.
Can finally complete the Scorsese collection. Finally have that one missing link in there. I wish there was more Kurosawa on home video in America, at least. There's a good collection, and I have what is available. But there used to be Criterion used to have the DVD set of all of his movies, but then rights kind of left. So Pajamusha, I believe, is a studio canal release, and then there's just all those other stuff. I just fuck. I just wish I had them all because I love this guy. He's arguably the best filmmaker to ever live. If want to argue about it, at the very least, he's top 10 to ever live. Especially when he's went on this run. He basically I don't even know when it started. Maybe I don't know, Rashomon. I'd have to look at the IMDb completely, but he went on this run from a certain point to the end of his career where he just did nothing but heaters. And you just go, wow, that guy just didn't stop. It was crazy the run he went on.
Yeah, I've seen a number of his films, but there are still, I'm no expert, certainly no expert, and I still really have to do a deep dive on his movies. But every time I watch them, they're so high stake, life or death I mean, the Shakespeare influence is always so strong.
Oh yeah.
In his films, and this of course is no exception. But for people who perhaps haven't seen it, or if you haven't seen it in a while, I'll just give a little synopsis here. So this is an executive of a Yokohama shoe company becomes a victim of extortion when his chauffeur's son is kidnapped by mistake and held for ransom. So now, do you remember when you first saw this film?
I do, because this was one I didn't see until like kind of recently. I even brought up my letterbox just to remember the exact date. I watched it November 22nd, 2021.
For the first time.
For the first time, because
okay.
I'd seen Kurosawa, a good deal of his stuff like from high school. Like I remember in high school, one of our teachers, we had a non-Western film class, so like anything about history from like Japan or Australia or whatever, he showed us Seven Samurai. And I remember that just, boom, blew my mind. I was like, oh, this guy, so whatever I could get to over time. And, this is a thing I talk about on our show a lot, and just with people in general. Like, we are of the generation where we remember when we had to physically find a movie. So like if a movie wasn't at Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, whatever, mom and pop store, you couldn't find it.
Right.
And so like I remember it being kind of hard for a bit getting some of his stuff. So it was like a slow trickle and everything. And this was one, I had the Blu-ray because I bought the Criterion. And it was just one of those movies where it was like, I'll save this for a time where I'm really just like, all right, you know what? I'm in a Kurosawa mood. Let's get to this one. And November 2021, I was just like, you know what? Today's the day. We're watching High and Low. And I went in blind. I didn't even know what the premise was. I was just like, it's Kurosawa. I don't need to look anything up. You'll
just watch it.
I'll just go right into it. And boy, did this movie fucking blow my non-existent hair back. This.
Me too.
I mean, this was like, I said it in my first Letterboxd review, because I rewatched it on Saturday. But this is like the best Hitchcock movie that Hitchcock never made.
Mm.
And there's like a lot of filmmakers that have made their bones, De Palma specifically, of doing like Hitchcock riffs, but like, later than Hitchcock was working. And even this is when Hitchcock was working, but this really feels like Kurosawa was like seeing Vertigo and North by Northwest and all of those things that Hitchcock was doing, and just being like, okay, you know what? I could do that. And this, I mean, just right from like, just every little twist and turn was just, you weren't expecting it, and then it's just like, oh no, that's the perfect way this story had to go. And it just snowballs into this complicated, morally murky, and ultimately kind of bleakly cynical movie.
Oh yeah. Particularly that the way it ends, which is one of the great endings, is so bleak, when the guy just breaks down, the kidnapper, and then the curtain drops, and just Toshiro Mifune, who plays Kingo Gondo, looking at his reflection, and you can hear his screams in the hallway. It's like, it just makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. I mean, it is so powerful. It's interesting you brought up Hitchcock, because one thing that popped up to me for Hitchcock was the kidnappers, when with the sunglasses, you could see like the reflection clearly of what he was looking at, and it reminded me so much of the very famous shot in Notorious with Ingrid Bergman and the binoculars. I don't know. I'm sure that rings a bell. And you see, and he had that in some other films, the reflections of things happening in the glasses. And I was like, he must have got that from Hitchcock. That was very Hitchcockian, that shot. I don't know if he did,
Oh,
but
I definitely feel like this guy, he definitely was seeing Hitch, because at this time, even in Japan, you know, when the world wasn't as connected and whatever, like I read an autobiography, his autobiography. It stops at Rashomon because he says like, oh, I really don't, you know, the story's not interesting after that. Like I'm whatever, like I made my career. So like, so he stops at Rashomon, but he talks about like always having gone to cinemas and seeing American movies and foreign movies and European stuff. And I have no doubt in my mind that this guy was seeing what Hitchcock was doing. He's in prison and he's trying to put on this big front that he's not afraid to die.
oh yeah, yeah,
And yeah, like you said, those the haunting screams, or even just when he starts breaking down and he's like
mm,
physically
yeah,
like the fear and the adrenaline is finally overtaking him and he's starting to freak out. And it's like, no, it's just because I was in solitary for so long,
right,
which is another crazy thing that 60 years ago, a Japanese filmmaker was like, yeah, we know that solitary is a bad thing to do to prisoners. It fucks them up beyond repair.
right, right.
But I mean, but even just the cynicism of Gondo does the right thing and it kind of ruins his life. Everything he put, like, you know, his whole plan of like, he even says it's not about making money, it's not about power. I just want to make the right shoe. I have pride in this company. I want to do the right thing. And then just he has to end up working as a factory manager for a B tier shoe company. Yeah,
Yeah,
I hope I could rival the other shoe company, which is just like, oh, that sucks. This guy did the right thing and
yeah,
just his entire life fell apart. He's not dead, he's not poor, but he's never going to reach that level. Like you just get that sense he's never going to reach that level again, and it's just going to kind of be coasting on just barely surviving the rest of his life, which is fucked up.
yeah. Well, that that just go. Like you had mentioned, like if Hitchcock had done it, I think you I mean, I love Hitchcock, but I don't think it would have been this intense. I mean, his
Yeah.
films, I mean, there is a level of intensity, but there he has more of those sort of roller coaster feelings of
Yeah.
dark humor and wit and irony and things that are clever, like the set pieces that you were describing. But this is just from the beginning to the end is so intense. Like I said, the Shakespeare influence is undoubtable. And you're right, because to me it's interesting because it really is about, ultimately to me, is about morals and doing the right thing even under circumstances where it's going to ruin you. And so he has a choice: either save this kid who's not his son. It's interesting, it initially, when he sees his son is gone, he's like, okay, yeah, I'll pay the ransom and I'll raise money to get what I need back. For anyone who doesn't know, he we see at the beginning of the film that he's fighting with the other owners of the shoe company he works for. And so basically his plan, they want profits. They want to make cheap shoes, and this guy's like an artist. He's like, he wants
Yeah.
to make the best shoes. He doesn't care as much about, these guys are all about business and making shoes that will break in a month, but they don't care. I remember when I first saw it, I thought, oh, this is going to be like an analogy for filmmaking, like the auteur fighting with the producers, right? And then, I mean, it kind of is, but then it goes into very like this thriller. But it's set up so perfectly, because here's this guy who has mortgaged everything he owns, his home on the hill, in order to buy most of the shares so that they can't run him out of out of the company, and he'll be able to run it and kick everybody else out the way he wants to run it. And then this kidnapping happens, and so if he gives the ransom money, he loses everything and he'll lose his job because then those guys will kick him out. I mean, it's such a clever, it's such a, I mean, the writers did such a fantastic job of like, there is no loophole for this guy. There's nothing that he could do, because even his sidekick, the guy who worked for him for 10 years, who winds up screwing him over, even he says, yeah, but if you just pay the ransom, then, you know, everybody is going to hate you because you let a kid die. You know, the public is going to hate you. But at the same time, it was that guy was the one who leaked it to the other guy. So if naturally they're going to go to the press and say, hey, look what this guy did. He let some kid die. So that was so fascinating to me, because he would have been screwed either way. He would have been screwed if he paid it, and he would have been screwed if he didn't pay it. It's just so fascinating how and this you know, it happens in life. A blink of an eye, your life can be changed forever.
That's the thing, man. The writing is so, and you know, there is a level of convenience to how all of these things converge at once, but you know, that's just kind of the buy-in you have to take with a movie like this, a Hitchcockian thriller like this. At the exact time he's leveraging his entire life and he's about to send the $50 million check to Tokyo, he's going to, the kidnapper strikes, and I'm going to do that, but oh no, wait, they kidnapped the wrong kid.
Right.
And just, but it's just done in such a perfect way where it's about what would you do in a lose-lose scenario. That exactly, it's, and you know, I remember the first time watching it, it's got such a Hitchcockian premise. I kept thinking at every turn it was going to take a more Hitchcockian populist kind of twist and turn, like, oh, obviously it was the guys that he's trying to kick out plotting this thing.
That's what I thought.
Or there was even a certain point, it's when the cops are following the killer, the kidnapper, and he runs into Gondo on the street and he just asks him for a light, like he's just being a creep, just like, oh yeah, you don't even know it's me. But like in that moment at first I was like, oh, are they gonna like reveal that Gondo was in on this and it was some like insurance scheme or whatever? And I was, but it never takes the easy way out. It's just kind of, nope, this kind of psychotic doctor who's very poor and resents the rich guy because he just keeps looking up the hill and seeing his big old house. Just, no, I'm going to take his kid and I'm going to take his money and I'm going to ruin his life. And it's just very simple. You know, it's simple, but the complications that arise from that one little, you just kick that pebble down the hill and just the little avalanche that arises from that is just astounding. And also, I mean, that whole conceit of he's looking up the hill, seeing the house. Bong Joon-ho had to have that in mind when he made Parasite, you know? That's such like a clear, like that's, I remember watching it the first time, and more specifically on Saturday, just like, oh, that is such a Parasite Bong Joon-ho thing of just literalizing the high class, low class thing, and the lower class guy just trying to take what he can. And I mean, just the ripple effects that this movie had alone, I feel like on cinema had to have been, everybody who is a filmmaker must love this movie, because I fucking love this movie. I mean,
me too.
I put it by Letterboxd the first time I watched it, saying, I spent the whole time watching this going, is this the best movie ever made? Because just like every little thing was just right, and the acting was perfect, and the structure, and the look, you know, him filming in widescreen, just it's a gorgeous movie. There's even funny bits. It's not like a lot of movies today where it's like, oh, it's a kidnapping thriller, it has to be miserable the whole time. It's like, no, there's funny bits, like when his right-hand man comes and tries to be like, oh, hey, if I convinced them to let you come back, you'll be like the mascot because the public loves you.
Right,
and
of course,
Gondo's
opportunist. And
Gondo's just ripping into him, and the two cops are just kind of just sitting there, just laughing to themselves because Gondo's just ripping this guy. Like, that's funny. like the cops have funny bits, and the structure too. On this viewing really struck me about how it really is cut in half between Gondo dealing with this situation and then the second half, the cops dealing with the situation.
The procedural. Yeah. It turns into the Naked City.
Yeah, it does. It's become such a great little procedural. And we get these little bits and pieces drip and drab throughout that part of finding out what's happening to Gondo.
Right.
And it's just such a great way to write it. And you even have that one cop who looks like a pit bull who goes, oh, you know, I always hated the rich because I grew up poor and I hated him at first, but I kind of like this guy. And that these cops are that these cops know that he's fucked, that he could have taken the easy, quote unquote, easy, let the kid die and I'll just still have my money and blah, blah, blah. And they're just like, no, he did the right thing. We're going to do the right thing for him. And there's that heartbreaking moment at the end where they're just like, oh, were we too late?
Right.
When that is just that is just such a perfect little punch to the gut, without being over dramatic, just, oh, we were too late. And Gondo's just like, yeah, but I can't blame you guys. Like, just, so good. Oh my God.
Yeah, I went back to look at a few scenes because I must have misread a few things, because I thought that they only got some of his money back. But when I went back, I was like, no, wait, what they say at the end is they actually got most of his money back. It was just some of it was spent on the heroin. But it was too, like you said, it was too late. They already had seized the property and everything. And I love that shot all of a sudden, like, you just hear the clock. I guess, you know, it struck the next hour, so it starts to tick, and it says on the clock, I forget the exact word, I think it says seize property or something.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh man, like, wow, to think that he actually got everything back. But, you know, typical of the, you know, business people to not give this guy a break at all. I mean, even you see that scene when right after this all happens, they're right in there taking everything away. Like, there's no compassion at all. It's just, it's business. It's cut and dry. And it can be, like we were saying, it can be like your closest ally, like his right-hand man, who in a way I can understand his position, because he's thinking, well, wait a minute, now if my boss here loses everything, then what's going to happen to me? So I can understand his concern. But at a time like this, when this kid is like been kidnapped, to go to the other owners and tell them what's happening in exchange for a promotion to protect himself, and then to come back later and be like, hey, you know what? I talked him into keeping you only because now everyone has boycotted the store because of what's happening, because of all that's happening with this guy, and they're thinking, oh, I'm not going to buy this guy's shoes if they're going to lock him out of the company. I just thought, man, that is typical business, you know, opportunists, blood-sucking people who just have no feeling for anyone other than to whatever they need to do to line their pockets. And you're right. I mean, the cops, they were funny at moments, because the guy, like the bald guy, you're right. He talks about meeting with them, and he was like, oh man, they're such assholes.
Yeah. It's like they were no help. They were just miserable bastards. And the scene where the guys he borrowed the money from come back, and they're like, oh no, we're gonna give you the interest you paid us yesterday back. We want everything. We're not gonna do this payment plan shit. You pay us back everything, or we're gonna take everything. So it really is just like, all right, he got all this money, but he's still in a massive amounts of debt. He just lost his home. He lost everything in the home. He lost his job. And it's just, hey, it's like, great, everybody loves him for doing the right thing, but that's not going to pay the bills.
And where you, like, you're right. And I imagine the writers looked at this because I mean, it is very high stake moment to moment. You know, it has those heightened, explorations that a lot of films have, but it all feels very real. It felt as though they looked at this like and thought to themselves, how would this actually play out? Like, what would be?
Oh yeah.
Like nothing feels like really like nothing like, you know, Hitchcock would get criticized because he would have these implausible plots, and I got nothing against that. It's because he was exploring a more surrealistic, dreamlike aspects to things, and you know, he didn't care if something was a coincidence, even though it was unrealistic, because it was about the emotions, and that's fine. But I felt like here they really were like, how would this play out? And nothing feels far-fetched to me. Like it just feels like, yeah, that's how it would go.
Yeah, nothing feels, other than the initial buy-in of just this all happening at the exact time, the exact worst time for God. Yeah. But that's just, you know, it's a movie, you got to have your buy-in,
of course,
whatever. But
it's like the heightened quality, yeah.
But like the kidnapping is not this elaborate thing. He just snatches the kid off the hill and takes him.
Yeah.
And he just takes him because, oh, well, that's what Gondo's kid dresses like, so that must be Gondo's kid. But no, they switched outfits, and that's why it happens this way. The train stuff. Oh, you got to throw the briefcase out of the train by the bridge, and it's going to be in between stops. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, yeah, he's not going to like risk himself getting caught by the cops. He's going to find a way to limit his exposure, using two junkies that he treated at the hospital to do the dirty work. Again, that just feels, you know, they're not like high class assassins or whatever, or part of some secret cabal of bad guys that tend to happen, you know, pop up in Hitchcock movies. Just some junkies that he picked up from Junkie Alley. The reason why the junkies kind of go against the plan is because, well, they just want more drugs.
Of course.
Like obviously you would use them because they're desperate, but they're going to want more drugs. That's not going to work in your favor. It's just it's such the procedural aspects, and like you said, thinking through, well, how would this really break down? You know, putting the dye pack in the briefcases, so if he burns it, we can see the pink smoke, which is just a great little cinematic flourish of just black and white movie, but
with that pink smoke, that was brilliant.
so good, so brilliant. Just those the way every cop like was, every angle they were taking, every little angle, and you like, oh, well, we figured it's got to be this kind of car. So we looked into cars that were stolen. 18 of those kinds of cars were stolen.
It's so detailed. I mean, you and I would be here all day to go through that. I mean, for anyone watching this or listening to it, you really have to go see it and see it again and again if you want to pick up on every little detail, because it seems like this is going to be impossible. But just how they methodically looked at every little lead. I mean, it is quite, they must have talked to, you know, people who really do this, investigators, cops, you know. It was felt so real.
They had to. The level of detail is so immaculate, and that's what one of the many things Kurosawa was unparalleled at, is those just really just bearing into the details of the world he's building. It's, I mean, just you know, the kid drawing the picture of the guy who kidnapped him, and the thing that really like damns him is just he got cut, so he's wearing a bandage around his hand, and the cops clock the fucked up hand when they're at the hospital. I'm like, all right, we got to keep an eye on this guy. And we did all the research. He's in the neighborhood that could see Gondo's apartment from that view, where he could see into the living room, and he's in between two of the phone booths that could have made that call. And he's just like, oh, the detail, just immaculate. I love a good procedural like that. Fincher must have loved this movie too when he, Zodiac has a very,
yes, that's true.
very, yeah, very much like this, just the nitty gritty details and the cynical ending, fuck, I love this movie. I mean, and got it, Mifune kills it. I mean, as he always did.
Brilliant. He's brilliant. He's so good in this.
You just see him being torn apart inside of just like, well, what the fuck do I do?
Yeah.
I like, obviously I don't want this kid to die, but he's not my kid.
Right.
Should I lose my entire life for a kid that's not even mine? And him interacting with the father of the kid who's his driver, and this guy's just like hunched over in misery the entire time, and you just
the
like,
way he would kind of like, his body would just kind of like what's the word I'm looking for, just like shrink as he was begging him to save his son with everything in his heart.
He's like folding in on himself. And even in the background, when Gondo's talking to the cops or Gondo's on the phone, you see the guy in the background just like sweating, and his face is crunched up, and he's like hunching over, and he's just like, oh my God, how could you not pay the ransom when this guy is right next to you, just dying in front of you? It's just, and then the wife, brilliant. I mean, the wife just like, come on, we can't let this kid die. Yeah. We don't need all these nice things. And he's making like a good point. He's like, no, you were always rich. You don't know what it means to be poor. You're not going to be able to handle it. I'm telling you, this is going to suck for you. And she's like, no, it's fine. And he's just like, fuck. Like, that's such like the first 50 minutes of the movie is just them talking through it. Just really, and then you get like 15-20 minutes of the ransom, the dropping off the ransom, and then it just becomes the procedural. And any movie where Toshiro Mifune just kind of disappears for an hour, usually you would like dock it, but in this case you feel him throughout the movie, because we spent so much time going through every little emotion of just, these cops need to do this because this guy is fucked if they don't catch this guy in time. And I mean, I'm in awe of the writing. This is just, there's arguments to be made for every Kurosawa movie. Which one's your favorite? Which one's the best? I think this one has to be the best written of his movies, in my opinion.
Again, like I haven't seen all of his films, but from the one I've seen at this moment in time, I certainly feel that way as well. But you're right, because in the second half we see less of Mifune, but every time we see him, you see that he is just totally depressed. And there was one moment where the cops suddenly stop in front of his house and they just look at him, and he's cutting the grass. And I thought, what an interesting thing to show, because here is this guy who at this point is going to lose this home. And I'm thinking, what makes him think to go cut the grass? And that could be up to you. Maybe he's just trying to distract himself. Maybe he doesn't want to sit with the anxiety, or maybe it's some kind of like ditch effort that hope that this is going to still be his lawn, but I thought, what an interesting thing to have done.
It's honestly, I feel like it's all of that. And also just the cop seeing again, like, because every time we see him, he's being knocked down another peg. So seeing him do that, it's just the cops realizing like, oh, well, he just lost his landscaper. He has to do this on his own now. Just that little thing of just, well, and he's hunched over. He's just hunched over like this, covered in sweat. And he's dressed in his suit. He's not like in like a t-shirt and shorts. He's like in his work clothes, just pouring sweat as he's mowing his lawn. And it's just, and the cops just look at each other just like, fuck this, we gotta help this guy.
I really love that particular detail. I really admired that in the film. And just going back to his butler, who was so interesting to me because naturally he was begging him to save the son, but then later at the same time he has this, he my impression was that he admired or respected his boss, maybe even, you know, felt really close to him, and then he goes and says to him, you know what, forget it, like maybe hopefully he'll escape. It's like he felt so bad that this guy was going to have to lose everything, and then later when the son does get back, when they get the son back, here's this guy who like looked like harmless, and then suddenly he was mean to the kid because the kid couldn't remember all these details. He's like, what do you mean you don't remember, tell them. And you know that he's doing that because he wants to save this guy's fortune, even to go so far as to like take the kid in the car and like take matters into his own hands and like drive around to see if he could like recognize anywhere they would have brought him. It was interesting because you just didn't expect that from this guy, but I found that interesting, just his loyalty and his guilt, and it was amazing. And like you were saying, you know, you'd see him in the background and stuff, like it was blocked so beautifully, and that is really hard to do, to have everybody in the frame so often, and he's not always necessarily telling you where to look, you know. It's kind of like it's such an ensemble, everybody is so distinctive, everyone is bringing so much to the cops, you like you said, the children, the wife, the butler, the right-hand man, the businessman. It's so many pieces, so many characters, and so having them all in there, it was just blocked beautifully. Even when the butler was begging Mifune, they go over to the curtain and they're just pacing back and forth, and Mifune can't even look at him. And I just thought the way he set everybody up that way, it's just, I mean, it's perfect. Whether they discovered that, you know, maybe when they were rehearsing, I don't know exactly how that was laid out. It's not always necessarily the director's idea, or, you know, who knows where that all came from. But regardless, ultimately that's what they did, and I just thought it's just seamless, you know.
I mean, that's one of the things that always blows me away about Kurosawa is how he films everything, his staging, and the fact that he had such a long career. It was like something I talked about on my episode of my show when we were talking about The Searchers, how Ford worked for so long. Like Kurosawa started out making, you know, Academy ratio movies, very square, very claustrophobic. That's just how movies were made back then. And you see his progression with the technology. Like, this is a gorgeous widescreen movie. This is a different way of thinking about how to shoot a piece of film. And then you see it again with his later work when he's making Dersu Usala in Russia, or when he makes Kagemusha and Ran. He makes these, as Kagemusha and Ran in particular, he's gorgeous.
Oh yeah,
just like these gorgeous, like almost Technicolor, where the colors are just shooting out at you, and you're like, this is a guy who was making tiny little movies in these just box frame back in the day, and then just to show the same mastery in widescreen color, like almost Lord of the Rings-esque battle scenes. You're just like, fuck this. That's when you know you got a guy who was just, he was never going to be able to do anything else other than be Akira Kurosawa, probably the greatest filmmaker of all time, you know. And just a little bit I loved in the stuff with the driver berating his kid to try to figure out where they took him, is that the cops run in like, oh, we got to stop this guy, like he shouldn't be out here, and they stop him and they're telling him like, stop doing this, and then they turn around like, fuck, the kid's gone again. And you just get that and you just get that moment. Yeah, you get that moment of, like, again, you think it's going to go in a more Hitchcockian way. The kid got kidnapped again. Oh no. But then just the kid's just up on the hills like, oh no, I found it. It's right here. And they're just like, what the fuck? Okay, they pull out their guns and then they find the dead bodies. And it's just again, a movie like this could have been such a bleak experience. A kidnapped child. Okay, this is not fun. That's kind of fucked up. But just being able to find, like, no, he's right here. I found the house. Oh, auntie and uncle is sleeping. and it's just, no, the junkies are dead, and you're just like, oh my god, this movie just to the very end keeps finding ways to just throw twists and turns at you. And maybe the darkest shit in the whole movie is this fucking guy goes down to Junkie Alley to test the drugs on someone, and he's just like, oh, she's dead, good, yep, this is the heroin I need.
Yes, that's how they also got him on murder, right? Because then because it was interesting earlier on, they realized that he would only actually get 5 because they realized he was intelligent, right? That he was only going to get 5 years at most for the kidnapping. So because what it was something along the lines of because he was asking money from Mifune, who's not the father, because he's not the next of kin, that means it's not extortion. And I was like, really? I was like, okay, I'll just have to go with it. I don't know much about the Japanese law at the time.
that felt like the inciting incident for Kurosawa to be like, oh wait, that's kind of a weird little loophole in the legal system. That's a movie. It almost feels like that little legal detail just brought this whole thing together. And like those little things of like, oh, this guy's smart. He knows like, he's not going to get, even if he gets caught, it's not going to be that big a deal. But then the cops realize, all right, well, we got these dead bodies, but we can't get him on the dead bodies. So let's trick him into trying to kill them, not realizing they're dead already. That way we get him on attempted murder. But then they get him. This prick is so evil. They get him on actual murder. And you throw the junkies onto it too. And it's just like, this guy's on death row, and you're just like, oh, like that's every little twist and turn is so immaculately conceived, because like I kept saying, I kept thinking at every step, all right, it's gonna go the typical way. This is gonna be like, oh, the kid got kidnapped again. Gondo's actually in on it, and I'm like, oh no, it's so much simpler than that. It just felt like something ripped, like you said, like. Cops must have told them like these little things like, oh yeah, we did this investigation where we found this guy because of he stole this specific car or whatnot. It's just I mean, Jesus, this is so good. I totally Kurosawa's the god. That's the thing. Like Kurosawa is, everybody needs to see this movie in my opinion, and I think it's on Criterion Channel.
It is
because I know So if you're not as physical media obsessed as I am, most people aren't, I know. So it is easily available. If anybody is hearing like, oh, that sounds amazing. Go and watch it right now. It's a quick and it's like 2 hours and 20 minutes, but it's like a quick 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Because it's just it's high stakes from beginning to end. But one thing that I found also really appealing was that they managed, I mean, maybe some people didn't feel sorry for the kidnapper at all, but they managed to have some kind of sympathy for him. At least that was how I felt, because what was interesting is that we know so little about his life history or why he turned out this way. But in that last scene, Mifune, like he talks about his life being hell from the beginning and all this stuff. And his he was like glad that his mother had just died and all this kind of stuff. And then Mifune is like, "Oh, is your life really that bad?" Like he seemed to be sympathetic towards him, and he's like, "Well, we don't have to hate each other and things like that." And you see, he just has this reaction when he says, "Oh, is your life really that bad?" And he kind of like flinches, was my impression anyways. And you get the impression this guy has had a rough life. And so he was taking pleasure in the fact that, the guy on top was now suddenly feeling how he's been feeling at the bottom. And they picked up on that even when he was calling, that he was enjoying making Gondo suffer. And I, for some reason, I couldn't help but, here he is, he asks him to come, it was almost like he felt competitive with him. It's like, I'm going to show this guy I am not afraid to die. I'm going to look him in the eye. And then, of course, that backfires on him and he breaks down. He tries so hard not to. And I couldn't help but feel for the guy.
I think that's the key. That's the key, is that he's having a very human reaction to, I'm about to be killed. Like I am done. And yeah, like you don't get much, but just I'm glad my mother died so she wasn't here, blubbering all over me about what happened, which gives you like, oh, he probably had a really like overbearing, controlling mother, blah blah blah. Probably only a mother. He doesn't mention his father. He probably is raised by a single mother. I think the evocative line from him for me is, I was always hot in the summer and always freezing in the winter. No matter what, I was always miserable. And you're just like, yeah, you do get why a guy might snap living just in the worst conditions at all times. Even if like Mifune kind of like throws the jab back at him saying, was your life really that bad? Because you were a doctor. Like it's not like you were poor or like
I was
homeless.
wondering about that. Like, was he a doctor or was he just like an
intern? I think he was a student. I believe he was a medical student.
Because I was like, why is this doctor so broke?
but even that's even the thing of just like, was your life really that bad? If this guy just kept trucking, like, you're a medical student, you're going to become a doctor, you're going to be fine.
It just proves that his problems went so deep. Like, there was no point in even trying to figure it out. Like, I mean, people who kidnap and murder in these sites, there's just, is there any helping them when they're this, when they would do, I don't know,
and there's just that level of sadism he has that runs so contrary to being a doctor that you just like, oh, this guy had this must have been in him his entire life. This is not of course, an environmental issue. This is you kind of had this. You were always going to feel like the underdog, and you had to strike back at people that you felt were above you. In this case, literally above him on the hill. But it's just he's just kind of he's just a guy. Like, that's kind of the thing. You read any news stories or podcasts or true crime books or whatever, so many guys are just they were just always kind of fucked up from the jump.
Exactly. It's just that they're psychologically speaking, their problems run so deep that you'll never be, how can you figure out like a Ted Bundy? You just can't. I don't know if you just can't. You can only go so far. Or even again, I thought they handled that well with this character.
Or even like the guys my father grew up with in Brooklyn back in like the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Like, these weren't guys that were like getting raped by priests or like poor. They had homes. They had mothers that fed them and had their, and a lot of these guys did grow up to be mob guys and were killers and had this chip on their shoulder and always looking for a way to get one over on somebody. And it's like, no, that some guys are just born like that. And that's that again, that's the one of the many ways the ending of this movie is so bleak, is just there was no real personal reason why he went after Gondo. It was just kind of like in The Strangers. Why are you doing this? You were home.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Which is the scariest thing to hear. There was no reason I did this to you.
Yeah.
You were just there. You were the rich guy near me. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's powerful. It's a stunning film. So this was the second time I saw it, and I loved it even more. So I'm glad we got to review it today. Was there anything else you wanted to mention about this film?
Oh no, I think we really got. I do think we talked it out. Is there any? I know you took notes. I'm more of a shoot from the hip guy. Is there anything else you noted?
No, I'm good. We covered everything. We covered everything I wanted to mention and much more. So no, I'm certainly good. Why don't you tell us a little bit about You're Missing Out, the podcast with Mike Natale.
Okay, so the show me and Mike do is called You're Missing Out, and the premise of the show is every season we go through the films of the National Film Registry. The National Film Registry is an American organization, a governmental organization, so it's government funded, where every year 25 films, features, shorts, documentaries, industrial films. The Zapruder film is one of the movies in there. 25 films that are deemed culturally significant. Some of the most important movies of all time. So we're on season 3 right now, which is the films that were inducted in 1991. And every year, the movies that are eligible have to be at least 10 years old. So right now, 91, the most recent movie that could have gotten in was 1981. So like this season we did, God, we've done so many. I'm this is fun. I'm forgetting some of them. I'm gonna actually look this up really quick if you don't mind, because go ahead. The episodes we've recorded this year have actually been great. Not that they've been bad before, but like I feel like in season 3 we've really hit such a good stride that we're now just like, even movies that we go into being like, I don't know how we're gonna do an episode about this. We managed to like find a really good angle. Yeah, okay. So like we did Chinatown, David Holzman's Diary, Gigi, Greed, I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, Out of the Past, Shadow of a Doubt. Speaking of Hitchcock, we did Shadow of a Doubt this season. Some episodes we still have to schedule and record. The Magnificent Ambersons, Lawrence of Arabia, Frankenstein, 2001: A Space. Well, it's actually 2001: A Space Odyssey. We're recording tomorrow. So we got a lot of stuff that's like movies people know, and then some stuff that are a little off the beaten path, like a David Holzman's Diary, the Princess of Zenda we're doing at some point in the next few months, whenever we figure that out. But yeah, so like next season, Annie Hall, a big one that's going to be really interesting for us is next season is The Birth of a Nation. That's going to be a real test to see if this show really has legs. If we can figure that episode out, I think we can basically do whatever the National Film Registry throws at us. So yeah, you can find us on Twitter, whatever your podcast app of choice is. We're all over that, Spotify, what have you. You could on Twitter, you could go to our links, find all the links. They're doing, Mike and Kyle are editing YouTube videos now, little teasers for the episodes, where it's like 1-minute clips from the episode where they cut in clips of the movie while we're talking to give you that little bit. It's also on TikTok. If you're one of the youths that are into TikTok, I am not, so this is news to me. So check us out on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Spotify, Apple Podcast, that's whatever, where we are available. And we've had Robert on last season for A Woman Under the Influence, the John Cassavetes masterpiece. That was a great episode. We really got into that one.
I enjoyed it.
All the nooks and crannies. And we're going to definitely have Robert on again. It's all about scheduling. The only reason my co-host isn't on this episode, peek behind the curtain, fellas, is he had surgery. And just, we'll get Mike. We'll figure Mike out at a certain point, but for now,
we'll bring you both back for another one. It's too bad Mike couldn't join us, but you could totally understand after surgery. But I'll definitely have you both back on to review another film. But I highly recommend for those of you watching to check out Tom and Mike's podcast, because I've listened to a number of episodes, like It's a Wonderful Life, All About Eve, and it's a really great show. And it's a great concept for a show. It's the registry. So
the concept is what really kind of got me to be like, we tried a podcast before and it was good, but it really didn't have legs. And when Mike came to me with this idea, I was like, okay, that's like actually a good idea.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of podcasts these days, movie podcasts, they try to be funny or they try to like outsmart the movie. It's not really about talking about why a movie's good or important. Like it's not about the positivity of cinema. And with that, the crux of the show is like, even if we don't like the movie, like I don't like Gone with the Wind, but like going into that episode, it's like, all right, I have to put that away and discuss why is this movie important in the grand scheme of not just cinema, but like the America, like you get into the socio-political like context of the time. And that's another all the movies are American because like I said, it's an American thing. So this was another treat being able to talk about a Japanese movie from my favorite Japanese filmmaker. But yeah, if you guys are looking for informative but still funny, we managed to have fun. It's not dry. Yeah. It's not like doing homework, but
no, not at all.
If you do want to listen to stuff that is more uplifting about cinema, why it's important, like what Robert does here, it's, I feel like you guys listen to Robert, you would like our show. It's very
exactly
like, pro cinema, even if the movies, spoiler, I don't like 2001. That's just like this weird little thing I have to carry on my shoulders the rest of my life. But I'm gonna go into that not being like, oh, I'm gonna take 2001 down. It's like, no, let's get into the importance of this movie. And yeah, I just really ranted. Sorry, guys.
No, not at all, not at all. But no, I know what you mean, because it is a show that celebrates cinema, why it's important, but also you're both bringing in your own distinctive opinions, and so it's not homework, right? It's like this is how you both really feel about these films. So that's great.
Yeah, we have fun. Even movies we like, we can make jokes about them or whatever. It's all about celebrating, and we can poke fun at things at times, but it's always like it with a loving lens.
Yeah,
and I think that's the important thing that we wanted to bring to the show is we love movies. Like, let's not make fun of them. Let's not do another show where it's like, oh, let's take this down. It's like, yeah, we get it. Next year we got to deal Birth of a Nation and Annie Hall. Like, we get it. These problematic movies, problematic filmmakers, but they exist. Let's talk about them without
ignoring it.
Real, like, we're not going to ignore it, but also like, let's get it out of the way. We sometimes it's inextricable. We're gonna have to talk about Manhattan at a certain point. We're gonna have to talk about Woody Allen's history with that. We had to talk about Polanski's history with Chinatown. Gonna have to do it with Rosemary's Baby. It's just one of those things. But ultimately, I think it's all about uplifting and not, trying to shove something in a locker.
Right. Definitely. Well, again, like I said, I highly recommend checking it out, and I will leave the links in the description box below for where you can follow Tom's and Mike's podcasts on social media, as well as their website. So, Tom, thanks again for coming on. This was such a great chat.
Thank you for having me. This was dope.
Anytime, and we'll set up another one down the road with you and Mike.
Sounds like a plan, man.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link, patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. Patreon is exclusive content created by me. You can also leave a donation directly to my YouTube channel by pressing the thanks link, which you will find right below the video frame, right beside the like, comment links below. Just click the thanks link and you can leave a donation directly to my YouTube channel from there. And if this is your first time here on my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the Movies logo. You will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left in just a second. Just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes. Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you in the next episode.